Welcome back, my dear students, to object-oriented programming using Python, or we can say OOPS using Python. We're still with abstraction and data hiding in Python. So what we have learned so far is the following. We try to divide. We had a separate user, created getters and setters, or you may say mutators and accessors, and we learn how to hide a variable so that we can create accessors and mutators. Why are we hiding? So that no one directly accesses variables, right? In case of giving read permission or write permission. There are times wherein we only give read permission, or else we either give read permission or we give the write permission. We cannot give both always, but yeah, it's basically in case of model you have to give both. But yeah, getters and setters will let you pass on objects like that, like we are passing. Right? We have created getters and setters here. We created hidden variables here, and then we go to register file, which is the register.py. Py is the extension for Python, you know that. And now what we are doing here, we're calling user class, and we're making an object of accounts class, right? And then we're calling a method of accounts controller class sign up, and we are passing the complete object of users rather than passing rather than passing separate arguments. We're passing a complete object as an argument, and this is the key, right? Or we can say it's the backbone of object-oriented programming, right? And now today we are going to learn few more things, but before we start with the database approach, some students had confusion regarding instance variables and static variables and class variables, right? So let me show you again. So I will say instance and class. Let's save this. Now I'll show you the demonstration once again, because some of the students have misunderstood rather than not understood. So let's start with class, C-O-M-P-U-T-E-R. So this is what we did last time. Once we are declaring the class, we have to go inside the body of the class by giving the appropriate spaces, so that we are now inside the computer class. Now what we are doing here, if I declare an instance, and let's say about, if I declare a constructor, right? So now you got to see this self. Why are we passing this self? So self means nothing in Python. It means the name of the class, right? It's self means this. This means the name of the class. So it's mandatory in Python. Now if I create variables, now I'll say self.name, right? And I say self dot let's say about class. All right, so these are two parameters that we're creating as of now. Now how do you cope up with them and how do you understand them, right? Class is basically let's say about self dot roll number. All right, so now this is called as declaration. Call this as variable declaration. Which sort of variables are they? They are instance variables, right? So for example, now let us say at the time when we call the constructor, right, we pass these variables, or what we can do, right, we can create an object of the class, right? And what sort of variables are they? Instance. So instance variables are the variables which are only accessible after you create an instance of the class, right? So for example, I say C is equivalent to the new of computer, right? And now here we are calling the constructor, and because the constructor is not accepting any arguments, we will not pass any arguments right here. So let's run it. Okay. Alright, so now it says self.name, so it does not exist. Computer object has no attribute name. So you'll have to say that, hey, I am not referring to an object here. I am creating an object here. So you'll say is equal to 0. Alright, so now you're creating, now it's not only the declaration, it is what you call initialization as well. And so it is variable declaration and initialization at the same time, right? You're initializing the variable, which is an instance variable name, with nothing, and you are initializing roll number with nothing. Nothing means blank strings, right? So now you can see the error is gone. So then we don't have any error right now. But now, in order to access, instance variables are accessed by the instance. C, you can say, is the object of computer class, or you can say is the instance of computer class. So now I can say C dot name is equivalent to, I can say NIIT, and I can say C dot roll number is equivalent to 1000, or I can write any name, right? Okay, now what we are doing, we are re-initializing the variables. Now you can say no error. Now if I say print C dot name, and I can say print C dot roll number. So now you can say getting Fahim and 1000, right? So this is instance. Now, for example, now if we have a variable here, let's say we have a class variable here which is available to the class scope. Right? Why is it instance variable? Because the scope is instance right here, right? Now let us create a let's say about a class variable. Okay, so we will go inside and see the namespace. For example, I will say address is equivalent to residency road. So now it is the address. Now what is the scope of the variable? The scope of the variable is it's neither inside any, so I'll write it down here, neither inside any method or constructor. So when a variable is neither inside any method or inside any constructor, or when the scope of the variable is the class only, it's said to be a class variable. Now how do you access class variable? Alright, I can now say, alright, I'll say CO computer dot address, right? And I can say here I want to print computer dot address. So now you can say I'm getting residence 0. Now can I do the same with name and roll number? No. If I say computer computer.name, we'll get an error and will not get anything. You're getting 1000. If I say now computer.roll number, right, you're not getting anything, right? But why? Let's say we will not initialize them, right? We'll only print them, right? So because you are declaring now this way, what you are doing, computer.name. Computer is the class name and name is the instance variable. Is there any class variable known as name? No. Name is here an instance, or sorry, it's an instance variable, no class variable, right? Roll number is an instance variable, no. But once I said computer, right, directly without creating an instance of the class, I am calling directly the class. Now here what we are doing, C is equal to computer, I am creating an object of the class computer so that I can access all the member functions and methods and variables of the class computer. But now what I am doing, right, I refer to name and I refer to roll number, which is not present here. So this way it is going to create, I repeat, it is going to create a new variable in the class namespace known as name. It is going to create a new variable in the class namespace known as roll number. Now if I say computer.name and I print computer.roll number, now I am getting Fahim 1000. Now what if I say self.name is equal to NIIT and roll number is equivalent to 001? What will I get? What will I get now? I'm still getting Fahim 1000. I'm getting this Fahim and 1000 because in order to access this, you have to use the instance. Now if I say c.name and I say c.roll number and I print, I am getting NIT 001. Why am I getting? Because in order to access instance variable, you have to make sure that you are calling the instance of the class and accessing instance variables by the instance of the class, which is C. And clearly C here. And in order to access class variables, you don't have to create an instance. You can directly call it with the name of the class, just like we're calling computer.name. Now, in order, if they do not exist, now let us say I am printing this. I'm getting this. So now if I say I want to print COMPU computer.name, or I have to print computer.roll number. So I'm getting, there's no object of computer that has an attribute name. So the attribute name is not within the class namespace, right? So now if I create NAME name is equivalent to NIIT, right? And I say ROLL roll number, and it does not use self. It does not use self. Now you can see you are printing NIIT 1010. Alright, so now name is here, name is here, roll number is here, roll number is here. Now how do you make sure which roll number and which part of the program are you accessing? Right? In order to access the instance variable, you have to use the instance. In order to access class variable, you have to use the name of the class. Now what if you want to edit roll number here? Right? For example, I will say self dot address is equivalent to ABC, right? And now I say, hey, I want to print computer dot address. Now you can clearly see I'm still getting residency road here. I'm not getting this. But if I say instance c dot address, now I'm accessing the instance variable here, that is ABC, right? It's as simple as anything, right? So this is how instance variables and class variables work, right? And it's not basically too much, or you can, it's not, let's say, about too hectic, or it's not too difficult. It's easy to understand for each and every one of us that how static, how different things work, right? Now it was regarding variables. So now let us go and understand the methods, right? What kind of method it is. All right, we have instance methods, right? As simple as anything. We have static methods, class methods, right? So let's create two methods. So now let us say I will define, let's say about let's say about init. Let's define init, and let's pass self, and let's pass M1, M2 and M3. So M1, M2. Now my constructor is accepting how many parameters? 3 parameters. So now what I say, I reinitialize them. I say self.m1 is equivalent to M1. Self.m2 is equivalent to M2. And then I say self.m3 is equivalent to M3. So whatever you pass to the constructor in M1 will go to the instance variable M1. Whatever you pass to M2 will go to the instance variable M2, and M3 will go to the instance variable M3. Let's say C is equivalent to computer, creating an object of the class. Now you will get an error. Hey, are you forgetting, did you forget passing 3 arguments? M1, M2 and M3 are supposed to be 3 arguments which you forgot to pass. Now please pass M1, M2 and M3, marks 1, marks 2 and marks 3. So I'll say 32, 33, 45. Now if I run the class, it runs as expected. Now what are we accessing? We are accessing instance variables with the object name. So I will say, hey, can I print instance or the object name dot M1. So I'll get object name dot M1, which is 32, as simple as anything. Now what are instance methods? Now let me create first a class method. So I'll say define info, and class method does not take self. I repeat, you do not have to pass self here. You will say M4 and that's it. But yeah, you have to use an annotation at the rate of class. You have to decorate the class method with an annotation class method, right? So I've decorated it. Now let us see how it work. So I will say, hey, I want you to return back to the function, right? So I will say format my marks are, right? So I'm formatting this, my marks are, and I will use M4. So let's run. So similar to class variables, like we did not access class variables with an instance of the class. We accessed class variables directly without creating an instance of the class. Because once you create an instance of the class, the function should take an instance. So there has to be a self here, right? So since I'm not creating an instance, so it does not matter if you have self or not. Now I can say I want to print. I will not use instance here. I will use computer dot into. What is into? It has to be info. I wrote into. What is into? I don't know. Right. So now you are printing computer dot info right here, and it is a function, so you have to, right? And it takes one parameter, which is going to be the marks. So now I'll pass one parameter, right? And now you can see one computer dot info. All right, it's as simple as anything, right? And what you are going to do right here is, let's say, but I'm not accepting any parameters. Let's say I'm not accepting any parameter, so I will use here marks are 1000. So let's say for the sake we're not accepting. Right now using info takes 0 position arguments, but 2 were given. So info does not take any arguments. So I'll go ahead. Now 1 was given, still giving an argument right here. So for that we will pass self here, and then we'll see we're getting my marks are 100. So now what is the difference here? The difference here is, let's see, even if you want to accept, I just forgot this, so I say M4. So even if I have to pass, so I'll say M4 is going to be 1900 or 190. So still getting my marks are 1000. So I will say, hey, I want to format it and use M4. So my marks are 190. Alright, what is the self doing right here? I'll say that self is doing nothing but taking the class name. But now we were able to access the class method without creating an object of the class. Alright, now if I take this decoration away, now you can see this here, we're getting an error, computer.info. Now if I access this with the instance c.info, so I will get the result. My marks are 190. But in order, I don't want to create an instance of the class, I want to directly access, because if I create an instance of the class, I have to pass M1, M2 and M3. So I don't want to create an instance of the class. So I'll say computer. So I'm calling it directly. Now you can see right here, computer.info. What is wrong? It's cached, I suppose, right? I don't know, it's getting cached. So I'll say idle. So let me go to IDLE. Okay, so let me just run it. Yeah, we still have an error. So let me just get rid of this. case. Okay, we forgot to mention the class method. Yeah, it's going to throw an error. Now if I take an instance away, and now you can see my marks are 190. Now if I take this class method annotation away, now you'll get an error. Now in order to access anything in the class namespace, it can either be a class variable which does not use self, so I'll say address, or I can use name is equivalent to Fahim. Right, so this is what I can do. So in order to access the class variable, I don't want to create an instance or an object of the computer class. I can create and access them. And similar is the case with static. Similar is the static. Now why are they class methods? Because they deal with class variables, and even these should only deal with class variables. For example, now I will say my name is, and I will deal with name, not self, without using any self. So now you can see right here, so I'm not able to access this. If I say self.name, so it is not going to work. So just a moment. Let's see, class variable, so I'll say CLS. It's a class variable, so I'll use CL return class dot I have name here, right? So it does not take any arguments, so I'll not pass any argument. Fahim. Right, now you can clearly see here that they deal with class variables. So I have not passed self here, I passed class, which is CLS. Now they are dealing with class variables. So you have to understand this. Class methods always deal with class variables. Now once you start web application development using Django, so you will understand, okay, you'll understand that class variables are meant to be dealt inside, or class methods use only class variables, and we can access them without creating an instance of the class. Now define info to, right, and now what I do with this, so I will say print this is a static method, right? So I will say computer.info2. I may not be able to access. Yeah, I'm able to access it. So now you can clearly see that I am able to, but I'm getting this none right here. So for that I have to just do one thing, decorate it with static. So you decorate it with static method. Okay, spelling mistake, static static method. Okay, now you can see you're getting this is a static method, right? And we still accessing it without creating an object name, right? So we have not created any object name right here, but yeah, in order for this to accept any parameter, right, it cannot deal with class variables, right? Static methods can be directly called, but it may not be able to deal with class variables, right? Understood? Fine. So now what is a class method? That deals with class variables and can be accessed directly without creating an instance of the class. It can be accessed directly without creating an instance of. What is static method? Static method is quite similar to class method, which can be accessed without creating an instance of the class, but it does not deal with class variables. That is the difference between static and class method. And static methods will always save your memory, right? If you're calling the method again and again and again, so it's not going to allocate a new memory, but instead use the old and the previous memory, right, to do its job. Right, so this is basically the complete definition for class variables and instance variables, right? So it's very simple, it's not anything difficult, right? So everything about these things, I mean everything about class variables and so on and so forth is very simple actually. So we tend to make it more and more complicated, which it is not, right? It is basically very simple. And let me give you another example of inheritance. A student had a problem with that. He said, why do we use inheritance? All right, for example, let's say we have a class model, right? So I'll say it's a model class, or it's a class for a login, right? So this is login, right? We know that in class, what are we going to use? If I go to users, we have seen we have used username, password, and message, right? So let's say about this, now we have to create a register. Let me go ahead and create another class right here. So let me just keep it as it is. All right. Abstraction has to be cancelled. Instance has to be. All right. So I'll create a new file now, and I will save this as register model. All right. So this is register model. Now we know that if I go to user, it uses, so let's say it's not user, yeah, it can be user, it can be login, or it can be anything else. So let's say it's not user, it's login. Fine, so it's now login. Now we know that in order to log in, you either have to give message back to the user that maybe please write your username and password, your password and username is incorrect, and you deal with username and password. These are the three things that you only deal in login. But yeah, in order to log in, you have to register the user first. If you're not able to register the user, how are you going to log in then, right? So that is my question. So in order to register, you may require another model known as register. So I'll just copy and paste. Right, so I call this as register. Now register also requires username, it also requires password, it also requires many different things. Right, what does register require? So I'm asking you. So let me create some getters and setters so that you understand, right? So I create a class variable, it's hidden again. So I call this, it requires first name, right? Doesn't, I repeat, does it require? Absolutely yes, it requires. So I declare first name, I declare last name, I declare let's say about address, all right, and I declare DOB maybe, or let's say about gender, all right, and I declare what else can we declare? First name, last name, address, gender, parentage, and there are many different things that we are expected to have. But yeah, hey, wait a second. Once we are logging in, we require username and password. What else do you require here? You will say, I may require the same username here, I may require the same password here, but yeah, why are you involving and why are you misusing your RAM? Why are you misusing your memory? You are using object-oriented programming, and in object-oriented programming, what you are supposed to do and what you are supposed to learn and apply is object-oriented methodology. And what is object methodology? The object-oriented methodology says reusability of the code. So are we reusing? So I'll say, hey, wait a second, I need to reuse something. So what do you want to reuse? So I will say I will reuse users. Right, so now you can see that the class users has been reused. But where is user? So it does not exist. So I will say, hey, wait a second, I will do one thing. I'll say from users import login. So first I import from users, I import the class login. Now you can see right here, and what I do, I make sure that my register model is inheriting from login. So from users import login. Now you can clearly see, right? So it's as simple as anything. Now if I reuse it, for example, if I go to register.py, I said user.set username, user.set password. Now I can say u dot, now clearly you can see it here, I can say u dot set, let's say about f. No, I did not create getters and setters here. I'm sorry. Okay, let's create getters and setters for these things. So I will say define get f name. So whenever you create getters and setters, make sure that after get, the first alphabet that starts, right, after get, the first alphabet that starts is capital, right? So I will say get. Now I have to get, I will say return, right? So I'll use self here. So I'll say return, just like we used in the user. So you can clearly see here, return self dot message. So you can say return self dot f name. All right, and that's what we did here in users, right? Okay, why are we using this dash here? Oh my god. All right, so I'll say return s dot reload modules. Right, so I'll say define get l name self. So I will use again return self dot l name. Okay. So now let's carry on with the third property. So I'll say define address. Okay, so I'll say get, I'm creating the getters and setters, pass self and return back to the function whatever is in this address. So I'll say return, right, self dot address. All right, so I'll say define get gender, and I'll say self, and I can easily return self dot gender. So I can say define get parentage. So I'll say self, and I can return, right, self dot parentage. So now my getters are ready. Now what do I have to do? Just copy, paste and create setters, right? So setters are known as mutators also, and getters are known as accessors often, right? Also known as mutators and accessors. So these are also known as getters or mutators, setters or wrong. So setters are known as mutators, getters are known as accessors. So getters are known as accessors and setters are known as mutators. So setters, now you have to accept one param. So I'll say param, I'm accepting one parameter. So here what I do, I will say self dot f name is equivalent to the param, right? Whatever, once you call get f name, right? Sorry, set. So let me change it. Set. Okay. So now once you call set f name, you have to pass first name. So that first name is going to be dropped in here, which you can, with the help of these getters, call, right? Okay. Now this is also param. You can call everything param because you don't need to mention param. So now the scope of this variable, right? Once you call set f name, you pass param. Then you call set l name, you pass param. No, param is a variable that you are declaring, right? And accepting whenever you call set f name, you have to pass one argument param, and the scope of the param is only the function here. Bas, that's it. So this param will not be available here. Similarly, this param will. So the scope of this param that you are accepting here, or any variable, you can name it anything. You can name it p. But the scope is only function, so they will not be available outside the function, as simple as anything. Okay, so just get rid of the return statements, as simple as anything. So we have got rid of the return statement. So I'll say self.fname is equal to param. That's it. Now copy this param and say param gender is equal to param, and this is equal to param. So now we have getters and setters, or accessors and mutators ready. But imagine this register class this time is inheriting from login, and this login already has username, password, and message. Three getters and setters and member variables already defined. So now how do you cope up with this? So I'll say, hey, wait a second, u dot. Now you can see, you can set anything. So you can say u dot set, let's say about f name. Right now it's as simple as anything. So f name Fahim. So you can even say it works absolutely fine. Okay, cannot import name user. So basically u is now login, right? So u is now login because we changed the name of the class here, which is now login. So my mistake. So I'll say u is equal to login. What? Okay, from users import login again. So my mistake. Yeah, no, it works fine. So now let's see if I call u dot. Now you can see how many things are we getting. Get message, get password, get username, set message, set password. So we're getting only these things, right? But because now we are registering, so this is not the login screen. This is the register screen. All right, so let's create two different files here. Okay, this is login panel, right? So I'll say from users import login, right? And I'll say L is equal to new of login, and now I'll say L, and then I'll call the login function. As simple as anything. Enter your username, it works absolutely fine. Please write a username. Okay, now login is working absolutely fine. Now we'll go to register, right? And we don't have to call right this login model here. We have to say now, hey, from register model, which is this file, import what? From register model import the class register. So I'll say from register model import class register, and we will say r is equal to the instance of register. So we'll use the same r, and whenever I have to sign up, I'll pass the same r here. Now it's as simple as anything. Now what I do, I say r dot. Now you can say, right? You can easily say r dot get set. Now you can see this right here. R dot set username. You're able to set username, right? You can say input enter your user name, and then you say r dot set password. Then you can say input of enter your password. No need to terminate. Now you can see, because we are registering now, right? R dot set. Now you can see this. Set f name, right? So I'll say enter your first name, because we have to register the user, and I'll say r dot set l name, r dot set gender, enter your gender, last name, and then say r dot set parentage. So you can even say input enter your parent parentage. Alright, and what not? You can enter gender, you can address, so you can say again r dot enter your address. We'll say r dot set a address now, and then you pass the same r which has every single thing. Now you pass the same object of r which has every single thing. R has set username, means R has username, password, first name, last name, parentage, address, and gender. You're passing the same R, which is the object of register, to sign up, right? And now it's as simple as anything. Now what is happening internally is the following, right? So now you can clearly see from register model import register, I went to register model and I imported the class register. And then what did I do? I imported from login controller, import accounts controller. That's absolutely fine. So I am importing another class known as accounts controller. Right, and whenever we say import, you have to first give the file name and the class name afterwards. So we are doing absolutely fine. What is the problem here? Now you can clearly see register has member variables like first name, last name, address, gender, and parentage. So there's nothing like get username and get password. But what we did here with an object of register, we're using set username and set password. How are we able to do this? This is where we are reusing the code, right? Set username and set password is actually with login class username, password, and message. And once we made register model, we basically know that once we log in, we don't require first name, last name, address, gender, and parentage. Right? So we'll just use username, password, and message once we are logging. But once we are registering, we may require to set up a new password, set up a new username, and each and everything. So why recreating it? Now, else I had to recreate it. Username, right, and password, and now recreate the getters and setters. That is basically misusing the luxury or not using at all the luxury of object-oriented program, which is reusability. I said, hey, I will reuse it. I already have username and password with my login. So registered class will inherit all the public properties of login class. Now login class has username, password, and message, and now eventually virtually use register class also has username, password, and message. That is why we are able to set the username and password after creating the object of register, not the login. So this is why, and this is how much important inheritance is. Inheritance is very important for let's say it's important for reusability of the code, minimizing the amount of RAM that is usually used. Alright, so it's the backbone of object-oriented programming, and inshallah I am just ending my class today because we have to get started with relational database management system. Just a few things, a few important things, right, with the database. Now we will enter the data actually to the database, and we'll see how things are done in a real world. Once we register using a website or maybe a software, then we log in using the same credentials. So tomorrow class is going to be very, very important. I wish and I want each and every one of you to complete the assignments and complete the practice today, so that you don't find it hectic enough from tomorrow onwards. Yes, things are going to get hectic now, but I wish you all the best. Do complete and do practice and do pray for me. Wish you all the best. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye, and take care.